Good afternoon. My name is Andrea, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the CA Automation Global User Community Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. I would like to now turn the call over to Mr. Chris Holmes. You may begin.
Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Christopher Holmes speaking. I am Board President for the CA Automation Global User Community. I just had a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. One of the things that we wanted to let everyone officially know is that we have an ideation. I believe that's what it's called, and Mary can correct me if I'm wrong. This is a wonderful tool on the board that will allow us to directly enable product enhancement, and it is utilized as a method for product management to come to and say, hey, what things were allowed, what things weren't allowed, what things do you like, what things you don't like. It's a way for us to vote and that sort of thing. But that's about it. A little bit more about myself. I'm with a company called Cortex. I do a lot of consulting services for them on numerous CA products. One of the product lines is client automation. But along with that, I also do a lot of the server automation, CCA, and Cohesion, and a couple other products. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Aid from CA Product Management. Aid, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks very much, Chris. We're very excited to have this community start up and hopefully grow very rapidly. We're excited because we're building a set of products for you, and your participation will enable us to really make a difference and help you make a difference in your lines of business. And today we're going to be talking about server automation. We're going to be talking about some of the existing and more exciting some of the new functionality that we're building into the product. Now, most of this is coming from our experience working with customers like you. Most of you, have large and growing environments of both legacy and new technologies, and you're being asked to manage the delivery cycles of business services and applications using these technologies in ever-escalating time frames. So the implication is that you need to get a lot better at what you do, and one of the critical ways of doing that is through automation. So what we do is we focus on building software that bridges the gap between the business expectations and some of the realities of IT management. Today we're fortunate to have a relatively small number of people here, and I tend to think of you as influencers, as thought leaders, and if you're going to accept that role, that means that you also participate in this call and then hopefully in the community going forward, because we're really focused on developing this product line very fast, and would like to interact one-on-one, not just on functionality and features that we've already thought of, but also some of the significant business problems that you're trying to resolve in your environment. So my name is Aid Galijatovic. I'm in product management. I've been leading this product line for the last 5 years, and most of the customer interactions were focused on enabling business activity. In the past, with similar functionality, we saw a lot of questions around efficiency, about cost savings. But as we've progressed in development over the last 3 or 4 years, the increasing number of drivers for automation are coming from things that normally would not be possible in the manual world. So automation is really enabling business activity that previously was not possible. And the ability to conduct business in new ways really creates differentiation for the company, will make you more successful in your jobs, and then ultimately your customers will benefit as well. So that's what we're fundamentally talking about. And server automation, as well as the capabilities attached to server automation, promote that capability very directly. So I'm going to switch into a brief presentation, then I'm going to invite my colleague Andrew Bolam to share some of the new functionality with you. But again, I stress the most important part of this call is your participation. So we have a Q&A queue. You can also let the operator know that you'd like to ask a question. And along the call, we'd like to start a conversation that we hopefully will get a chance to continue with you going forward. So server automation attacks really three specific points. One is increasing complexity and variety of operating systems that you probably have to manage on a daily basis. I'm talking about a number of legacy operating systems in the Unix space, perhaps things that you've inherited from acquisitions, along with all of the new technology that you're implementing because of the efficiencies and because of the agility that they provide. In that case, I'm referring to a variety of different hypervisors, use of public clouds, use of other forms of automation or orchestration. And the key to that is how do you actually integrate it so that you can do things faster and that you can reduce the error rates. So server automation was really intended to provide a very simple view into a consolidated set of technologies so that you don't need separate teams for managing separate operating environments, so that you can put boundaries around business processes and automate them down to the infrastructure without necessarily worrying about differences between virtualization technologies or operating system technologies. So the way that that manifests in practice is that things become so simple that you can enable your junior admins to do work that previously required multiple separate teams of experts. One example is management tasks on Solaris, management tasks on AIX, then as well Windows and Linux and a variety of hypervisors. In the past, each of these technologies really required specialized knowledge of their utilities, of the configuration of files, of best practices. And one of the key aspects of what we've done in server automation is to present these in a standardized user interface and ability to manage the back-end calls to these tools so that common tasks like provisioning, deprovisioning, batching, deployment of applications become manageable for less experienced people in these technologies. And that's one of the key differences with our tool. As a vendor, we are agnostic to any specific technology, and we put in a significant effort and investment to assimilate as many technologies as possible in that. In the second part of the call, you'll hear about a couple of additions to our already large support matrix of things that we do today. The second thing is to look at the workload that's coming into the organization and to take appropriate workflow that's temporary in nature. It could be related to development, or it could be related to testing, or it could be related to other non-production activities, and to fully automate it on top of shared resources. In a way, we're creating a private cloud, which then constitutes a sandbox environment for various organizations to draw from so they can get their job done quickly. The key benefits of that are on the practical side, you maintain overall less equipment because equipment becomes shared. But on the business side, almost anyone can then borrow resources for a period of time without needing administrators or perhaps your teams to directly interact and spend time in deploying them. So it's a private cloud, and server automation enables a very effective form of private cloud that can include both physical and virtual resources and can seamlessly connect with resources on the web like Amazon by provisioning EC2 instances and so on. The third element that's an accelerator of business productivity is the ability to standardize services and to present them to your business users through a service catalog. And as part of our greater solution, we combine server automation with our orchestration and catalog technologies to enable you to standardize business services, not just simple installations of a few servers, but the full-blown services inclusive of application and middleware and a variety of infrastructure resources so that they can be ordered by business users to a catalog and then provisioning using a fully automated system on top of the shared infrastructure. So with server automation, we are enabling these three capabilities. And augmenting these capabilities, we also have a set of network automation functionality areas that we'll also talk about. And we have quite remarkable configuration capabilities between the system and application configuration management. In this case, we're talking about the ability to really capture manual configuration items and to track them over time so that you can be sure that everything's configured properly, not just on a given server or application, but across the environment. And again, reminder, today we really want to be interactive, so if you have any questions or reactions to what we've covered so far, feel free to answer them in the Q&A queue, and one of us will pick them up and incorporate them into what we talk about. So in terms of how we are bringing this capability to market, for those that are not familiar with the portfolio, one of the key components is server automation, and that's what we're really talking about on the call today. And server automation includes the key capabilities to manage servers and to provision software. But it also includes a very simple-to-use front-end portal appropriate for temporary systems. So if you want to create a small private cloud, you can easily do it with just server automation. We also have two suite packages associated with this portfolio. First is aimed at enabling better control and automation of regular production workloads on a day-to-day basis within a large and complex environment. We're calling it the Automation Suite for data centers, and it includes server automation, but then also includes process and configuration automation. These three components are well integrated, and they work together to enable you not just to provision and manage servers, but also to manage how things get done in the environment from the orchestration perspective, and then with that added benefit of configuration management. So the production-grade systems are always up to date with the correct and latest configurations. The third point and the second suite relates to the ability to test standardized services and offer them through a catalog. Our C Automation Suite for clouds adds specific content power packs that essentially are groups of connectors and process flows out of the box that enable you to do certain things like enable virtual desktop environments or enable SAP or enable a number of different common deployments, but also present a catalog interface and capabilities so that those can be presented to business users in a well-organized way. Back on the IT side, with all of these capabilities, you would really have the ability to automate not just server provisioning, but then also additional activities related to service deployment. Over the years, we worked with very many customers, and we found out that deployments that are successful usually focus on a business outcome. And that is to say that you notice a bottleneck or a significant impediment to business growth or to satisfying customers in a better way, and then you apply technology to those areas. So some of the good examples that we've seen over the years is companies who have adopted server automation to reduce cycle times. If it takes 3 months or 6 months to get a full functioning server to a business customer within the company, that means that that particular department might need another 6 months to launch a service they're working on. Imagine if you could reduce the time to getting the resources down to a day or even a couple of hours. That would have a significant impact to the business of the company. In addition, ability to have private cloud for development will have profound implications to innovation. Here at CA, we have access to our own private cloud based on this technology, and every employee can get systems to experiment on, to build concept projects on, and we don't have to ask for permission or pay any money for procurement of hardware. If you can do that in your company, it will allow your people to be more creative, and perhaps you would have new projects that otherwise wouldn't exist that create additional top-line revenue. And then to the third point, we have a number of customers who specifically wanted to standardize IT and come closer, at least in concept, but also in practice, to a service bureau for the rest of the company. This is particularly common in larger organizations where they want to standardize IT services and then consistently offer them to a variety of different organizations within the company. The key to that is not only being able to automate infrastructure, but also to prescribe specific things and specific procedures within a robust process and then present them in a user-friendly way. So I hope that some of you have already experienced at least some of the benefits I talked about, the idea of the community to expand on those, have discussions, share best practices, and going forward, we'll like to do just that. So again, the way that this is positioned in the market, it's really adjacent to other capabilities we offer around service automation and security. In this case, we're managing the IT infrastructure and helping the applications get to the hands of your customers much faster than normally would be possible. So in practice, if you're already having moved on from using physical DVDs or images for provisioning servers, one of the simple, easy steps will be to start using basic server automation to provision and manage Unix, Linux, virtual, and cloud systems. Standardizing on server automation would really save you a lot of time, and it would open up the opportunity for you to invest in optimizing the processes and looking at the performance, and then doing some of these other things that I've suggested up front. And you can, as you can see on the screen, capabilities or the scope of capabilities within server automation includes managing multiple platforms, automating software delivery and patching, and then being able to set up policies so that you can react to changes in the environment in real time, so that even if you're not at the console, systems can respond to spike in demand or certain conditions that you may anticipate are likely to happen in your environment. So today, we're going to focus on a couple of new things that we've added in our server automation 12.7 release. First and foremost, we're going to talk about business service provisioning. We're very excited about it because it goes beyond just deploying an application or deploying a single server. It starts to define in a very practical way how we can describe a service and how that service description can be useful in provisioning it in a different place and perhaps in a dissimilar environment. One of the simple examples is deployment of middleware. So after you have your basic operating system and monitoring infrastructure installed, you often have to put several pieces of middleware on top of that environment. And that lends itself very well to being defined once and then used over and over and over again. And previously, people had done that through orchestration, but we're finding it's very useful to incorporate it more into the infrastructure automation stack, where we can simply define it in server automation, export it, and allow our customers to enact it and deploy it across various sites, just using that definition. We're continuing to add platform support into server automation. So one of the things that we'll also cover is addition of EMC Clarion and VCU block into our supported matrix. And as you would guess, that allows you to manage these types of systems as well and incorporate them into the regular management processes from the automation perspective. Additional platform enhancements, as you can see here, are Zen and vCloud Director support. So I want to pause, see if there are any thoughts or questions or comments from the audience. And
ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to ask a question, you may do so by pressing star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to ask a question, you may do so by pressing star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. There are no questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So, Andy, do you want to tell us a little bit more about business service provisioning and a couple of these new features that we're talking about?
Yes, thank you, Aid. I will continue the discussion now. In fact, you have my lovely voice for the next couple of sessions, so don't hesitate to ask questions as we go through. So what I wanted to do, first of all, with discussing what's new in this exciting new release, was just to do a little bit of positioning around each one. Basically, we use a term, business service provisioning, which has been coined by many parts of IT, but I want to sort of framing in terms of what we're trying to do with this and what the value is to people who use it. So firstly, it is a solution to build out the business service in an automated, repeatable and reliable manner. And when we say business services, as I've indicated, this is to support the capability of building a multi-tier application from the ground up and deploy that onto one or more environments to achieve the goal of supporting that business service. So the idea being it's an N-tier application environment, which could be one, but it could be 10, 20, whatever number of servers are necessary to deploy that environment on. And it combines the infrastructure with the applications themselves. The idea being you don't have to build workflows, you don't have to run scripting, etc. And the important point is that we can deploy this in as minimal number of steps as possible. It's extremely important, particularly in the world of virtualization, because we have this fluid world where people continue to spin up instances of virtual systems. They're not just spinning them up for the fun of it, they're spinning them up to support a business service. And that business service is typically laid down after the provisioning of the virtual instance, the virtual operating system, etc. The idea being to really encompass that and make it as dynamic and fluid as possible. So with that in mind, I'm sure you've heard a lot of people say, well, we can do that. What's different about CA? And I think a little bit of description, I'm not going to go too deep in technical here. What we actually do is we separate the definition of what constitutes the application itself, or the various components of the application, from the infrastructure and the actual application binaries. What that allows us to do is create a model of the application. And that model can contain various parameters to drive the way that application and business service is deployed. Example of that is that, let's say you have a definition or a business service that needs to run in test dev, and then when you move it into production, there's things that change. Example, the size of the database, the name of the database, where the database is located. On the middleware side, the hooks that connect the things. On the front-end side, where the web servers are, the number of the web servers, etc. So there'll be differences between those environments. Or it's for a different application. You have application A versus application B, and there's slight differences. Perhaps if we're using SQL Server for the back end, it requires a different type of installation with different users for the admin and for different configuration for the database. So the idea being is that you can use those models and then replicate the use of that model in different environments. And the reason why we separate the metadata from the actual installation itself also has a benefit in the Microsoft world. For those who may or may not be familiar with this, that Microsoft actually have restrictive practices with respect to allowing us or allowing yourselves to redeploy an application, particularly for MSPs, allow them to effectively distribute the application environment as a whole entity. So what we allow you to do is use your media with a definition. The other thing that it helps to deal with is how do we continue the process of evolving those applications over time. Usually there's slight tweaks, but for example, if you have a problem with an application, maybe you need to increase the size of the database. So the next time that you deploy that, you can make that tweak in the definition without having to do it live on a real system. So the other important point is that, as I noted previously, no scripting involved here. We're going to be able to pass parameters into the definition to flip the bits for a larger database or a smaller database or a particular queue name in a middleware technology, for example. It also doesn't require the necessity to build run-book flows. Now, previously, as I said, we can use our process automation technology to achieve that. You can still do that with this technology, but you may not need to. And the idea is to minimize those number of steps and the need to build those flows. And it does support our what we call self-service reservation multi-tenant capabilities that support the cloud, which means you can provide that to your users or your, as an MSP, your customers, with a very simple way to deploy an application simply by a pick and point from a list. Very, very powerful. And the idea being that once you build up the library, then you can use it as a repeatable process. The other thing that we're doing with it, as a matter of which is not on this slide, is we're building up a community of those particular applications. So those definitions are actually open. So, for example, if you as a customer want to share that with another customer, it is certainly possible to do that without sharing any proprietary information about the way your application or the application itself. Obviously, if it's appropriate. So those things are all slightly unique to the way we do things, but of course we need our infrastructure to do that. So let's have a quick look at the way this is implemented in terms of the benefits that it provides. Oops, sorry, 2 slides. First of all, you're seeing a screen there of a self-service portal where users can pick and choose the applications they wish to deploy. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. This is a part of our new user interface for our self-service reservation manager. But the idea being, as a user, you basically can very simply provision this multi-system business service across different platforms simply by pick and point from the left. So, for example, if you want to deploy a LAMP stack or Office or a SharePoint side or Wiki or something like that, it's relatively easy to pick and point from the list and deploy it. Therefore, you don't need senior administrative personnel to deploy such applications. You can actually provide that even to some technical end users or to a more junior admin. We simplify the middleware and application provisioning for those dynamic environments by parameterizing the configuration. So I'll ask you a simple set of questions. What is your queue name? What is your database name, etc., as you deploy without having to know how to do it within the application itself. As I said, we model the application, including the infrastructure, makes it simpler. And, of course, we can deploy this infrastructure on multiple environments. We've come out with our first release to support VMware vSphere and our own AppLogic grid infrastructure for the cloud. But the technology is built on server automation that supports a wide variety of both physical and virtual infrastructures. So over time, we'll add more and more platforms to this. And what it does, it enables the delivery of complex applications very quickly and very simply. So we believe this is a very important step for our customers, and we welcome the feedback on that. So obviously, if you have any questions related to that, how it works, etc., we can certainly address those as we go through. So moving on from there, and that was one of the key features we had, we then really talk about platform support. And there's 2 areas of platform support. First of all, storage. Server automation has actually supported the provisioning of native storage for a number of platforms in prior releases. And what we've done this particular release is we've introduced the support for 2 platforms. First of all, EMC Clarion. Clarion's the mid-range standard storage array from the EMC, and it's very common in customer base to have for EMC customers to use Clarion, certainly for the development platform, and certainly in some instances into production as well, where they have the larger storage arrays. And basically, we're providing the support for native provisioning of storage using the server automation as part of the overall infrastructure storage provisioning. It's important as EMC is the market leader, there's no question for that. And of course, the EMC storage really increases the value opportunity across the usage of the product. So where you have EMC storage in your environment, you can take play of this with the new release of server automation. So just to give you a quick flavor of what it looks like. Basically allows you to provision and attach the storage to the various platforms that we support within server automation. For example, Windows, Linux, Solaris, attach it to the virtual environments as well, such as VMware and IBM's LPAR, and to some of the converged infrastructures such as Cisco UCS. In previous release, we'd actually supported just NetApp environments, so we're really enhancing that with the EMC Clarion storage this particular release. And we support that over iSCSI and Fiber Channel. And the important element to this is we do already support it in the vCluster support, so you can actually VMware vCluster support environment. What we're looking at there is providing SAN provisioning as data stores inside of a VMware cluster. So when you're building your VMs in VMware, you can dynamically build and attach and provision the storage associated with the VMs in that cluster. So that's the first one. That's EMC Clarion support. Similar to that in some ways, we're also working with the VCE group, which is an extension, for those who don't know it, is a VMware, Cisco, and EMC. And part of that is to support the VCE vBlock architecture, which is part of a converged infrastructure using Cisco UCS. We already support Cisco UCS from the provisioning perspective for both physical and virtual environment. So what we're actually doing here is really allowing the user to take play of the whole stack on a VCE environment. So VCE is pre-configured, tested, and validated infrastructure, and wheel it in. It's basically a combination of compute, network, and storage resources, and allows you to really build systems on a very comprehensive infrastructure. It's very important to understand that that Cisco is becoming a very important player in the technology space. It's, I think, now the third provider in terms of the servers that are being shipped in the U.S. I'm not sure what the numbers are worldwide, but together with EMC and VMware, it's becoming a very, very strong player in the market. And the integration is fairly straightforward. It's a set of service offerings that you can actually define through the UI of server automation, the idea being that you can provision the whole stack as a single entity. It integrates to the vBlock architecture using UIM, and this really brings it into play so that we can complement the way we can do this through our process automation technology as well. So a very quick view of this. I'm conscious of time here. Basically, we can discover the VCE environment, look at resources that are available through the VCE vBlock, and that's network storage and compute resources. It allows you to build new services, provision, and deactivate as appropriate. So if you imagine the environment where, that's particularly in a virtual environment where you're allowing users to reserve systems for a period of time, you'll examine the infrastructure, see what's available to you, build new pieces of infrastructure, build it alongside the virtual machines. When the virtual machines are no longer necessary, you can recover those resources ready for the next instantiation. So it gives you that top-to-bottom approach of provisioning resources in your environment. So the next, oops, I've clicked it twice. Similar to that, we also added the support for two new virtual environments. The first one is Citrix Zen. Citrix Zen is an upcoming hypervisor. We're seeing more and more requests from customers to support Citrix Zen as well as VMware and Hyper-V. And the important point there is that we're seeing customers that have a mixture. It's not just that customer focuses on one particular virtual environment. They're using different virtual environments for different perspectives. For example, I can notice we have one customer that's wall-to-wall VMware in production environment, but all their test environment, test and pre-production environment is all on Hyper-V, for example. Another customer is doing the same with Zen. So, excuse me. The support that we offer is not just a matter of provisioning on it. It's the whole stack that we provide in terms of capabilities within server automation. That is the discovery of the environment, so looking which servers are actually running the Zen server environment and discovering all the VMs and templates, etc., that are available to you. And also the monitoring of that environment to look at network storage and compute resources on the environment to make sure you can see whether you have spikes in usage, etc., and take appropriate action. For example, to move VMs from one environment to another. Important, as I mentioned, it is a very fast-growing hypervisor environment, and we're seeing many customers asking for this now. And often seen as a lower-cost alternate to VMware vSphere. Now, I put the bullets at the back end of this slide just to highlight that we are very comprehensive in server automation from the perspective of the hypervisors and the virtual platforms we support, as well as cloud platforms. You can see there we have VMware vSphere, Hyper-V, LPAR, Solaris Zones, and now Citrix Zen Server as well. And on the cloud platforms, we have our own AppLogic cloud platform, EC2, and now, as you'll see in the next few slides, VMware vCloud Director. So we're building the boundaries out in terms of the platform support on the virtual environment. So a quick view of what we're actually offering here. I'll do this one with a build, I hope. If the slides are going to behave themselves. There's some latency. No, it's building. So we're going to support Citrix 5 and 6. And that's the server environment. That supports both Windows and Linux VMs. Allow you to discover the environment, which servers are running this, how many VMs you've got applied to each one, what resources they're utilizing from the CPU memory, storage, and VLAN allocation perspective. We also allow you this provisioning capability that allows you to manage the environment as well as provision. So stopping and suspending a VM, for example, if you're seeing a problem with overutilization on a particular VM by the monitoring that we actually have above, and we see a VM that's hardly ever used, shut it down. It's still taking resource, shut it down. It's no longer required, for example. If a VM is completely no longer required, we can even give you the option to remove that VM. And then from there, it's basically allowing you to deploy particular VMs as appropriate. So what we can do is create a new virtual machine from within a pre-stored template, and we can allow that with and without reconfiguration. Idea being you can take a standard template and modify it. For example, if you have a template that only has, let's say, half a gigabyte of memory and you want to increase it to 1 gigabyte, you can certainly do that as part of the reconfiguration of the VM as you do it from the template. The other thing that we do is we watch the CitrixN jobs to look for issues, etc., and allow you to stop those jobs if they go to a certain point and begin to fail. For example, you can actually stop and look at the queue from within the server automation environment. Just one note, we've introduced the support for both Zen Server and for vCloud Director, you see in the next slide. We call it basic support, and what that means is essentially that you can use the product through the server order core UI. It doesn't bring to play some of the newer reservation manager capabilities at this release. That will be coming in forthcoming releases. With that in mind, let's move on to vCloud Director. And I'll skip through these first few slides for time because I'm conscious of time we have here. But let's just talk a little bit about what vCloud Director is. vCloud Director is VMware's offering for cloud management solution. It allows you to deploy applications, what the term vApps, which are a one or more virtual machine cluster, including the application, into a monitored environment that allows you flexibility of how the environments are actually deployed. The idea being with vCloud Director that it takes away the management of that environment from you, and it dynamically can allow resources to float between different servers and those sort of things. It's designed for both private and public cloud use. It was introduced about 2 years ago. Actually, I actually worked for VMware during that period of time as well. I know it pretty consistently and understand that they've made some improvements in the last couple of years, but the product is still somewhat of a new product. Excuse me. We're going to provide the same sort of capabilities we did for Zen, but for the VMware vCloud Director environment. So it's basically the ability to manage the vApps, which are the containers for the actual applications, together with their compute, network, and storage resources, and allow you to manage and provision those as appropriate. It's becoming an important platform. We're seeing a lot of customers adopt VCD. Somewhat as a try it before you move into cloud. You can deploy it internally and use it as a management solution on-premise before you move into an MSP environment, for example. But one of its downside is it doesn't have a really serious automation capability. It has some monitoring. There are several components that plug together to give you some level of sort of automation, but it's really a runbook automation type capability. It allows you really only to build flows to deploy things automatically. It has 2 workflow engines built into it, unfortunately, as well. So the idea of us supporting is really simplify that to the user. And as I said earlier on, we try to give the same common look and feel and flow for multiple platforms, so that when you're used to supporting, let's say, even physical, you're doing something very similar in a vCloud Director environment. You're picking and choosing the templates, the vApps, and very simply deploying those. So a quick view on that, there's a couple of slides on this, is we support the latest release, which is being the vCloud Director 1.5. That shows a little bit of its level of maturity. So it's only been out, as I said, a couple of years. We discover it and monitor the environment. We would do similar things with CitrixN, for example. So looking at the various components, the resources themselves, the catalogs, the applications, the users are defined, and this is important. This product is designed to work in a multi-tenant environment, and that may be your own tenants or it may be an MSP's tenants. So the important area there is what does the user have access to, and the ability to control that within an automated capability. So it also monitors the resources, and that's the same sort of resources for Zen Server, CPU, memory, storage, and network utilization for a particular virtual application environment. We also allow you to manage the vApps themselves, same sort of things as a template in a way, start, stop, resume, reboot, etc. And then they have a capability they call deploy, which is basically deploy the application into the cloud environment. And what that does is it reserves the systems necessary to support that application. So we support the ability to deploy and undeploy the application, the ability to clone it as well. And the reason for that is that, you know, if you have an environment where you maybe have two clouds and you want to go from a test dev environment to a production environment, or you want to copy a particular application for client A to client B, or from group A to group B to give them permission into using that, you can do that as well. And again, some management of the resources, such as adding and removing a VM resource for a particular application. For example, if the application is running short of resource, you can add a new VM, for example, to that particular appliance, that virtual application. And obviously, we need to be able to reconfigure things like CPU, memory, and storage leases as appropriate. The other operations that we can perform on the actual VApps are related to templates. If you have an application that's running as a VApp, we can convert it into a template. That's another way to migrate and manage the application from one customer to another, for example, or from one usage to another. So we can convert and then create the VApp from the template itself. The other aspects, as I mentioned earlier on, the more around the operations of the environment. The Cloud Director uses a thing called organizations or orgs to containerize the applications. An org could be a customer, it could be a particular area of the business, and basically the idea of a virtual data center is that set of users will have access to the objects in that container or the organization, and what you can do there is manipulate basically all the objects underneath, so you can do things like create, delete, enable, and disable the organization virtual data center, and you can change the way leases actually occur within the VDC. Catalog, it has a catalog on the top, and we can actually, the idea of catalog is so that multiple users and even multiple organizations can use objects within the catalog. VApps and templates are actually deployed up into the catalog, so users can actually deploy from the catalog. And we've got the standard things like create, publish, delete, modify the values within there, and assign ownership of the particular catalog itself. For example, you may migrate from one customer to another, and as you do that, or from one user to another, you may want to change the ownership on that particular catalog. And finally, moving in the applications themselves. User operations, obviously we mentioned earlier on that user operations are important inside of VCD because it uses these container objects, and of course, to be able to do that, you need to be able to manage users to do this effectively, or for server automation to do this effectively. So we do things like add, delete users, add, delete members of groups, etc., and modify the group containers, etc. Again, rather like VCD, this is what we call basic support. It's quite comprehensive, but it's basic support, and we haven't exposed that to our self-service reservation manager at this time. It's quite a lot to take in, I do realize, and that's really on the platform side, and I'm, again, conscious of time, so I'm going to skip the next slides fairly quickly. User improvements with every release. We actually try to strive and improve the usability of the product in multiple levels. And there's two particular areas I just want to talk about today and just highlight those. The first one relates to our self-service reservation manager. The look and feel on the self-service reservation manager seen on the top screenshot here is very much a forms tool, very much a standard type UI. We've migrated this to a new type of UI, very graphically oriented. It can be modified, by the way, and you can put your own logos and things like that on there. The idea is to provide the business services and other reservations, which could be physical, as a very simple UI, very simple concept of sliders and parameter control rather than having to type in data. The idea is minimal input from the user's perspective. I'm not going to take you through the whole UI, but to just give you a look and feel of it. The next slide will show the improvements we've made in the actual UI itself. So the idea being that you can have services, and these services could be physical, as I say, promoted up to a very simple click and point selection list. We have the ability to just click on that object, no parameter configuration, and it will just fire away and deploy. We also have things like most popular, and like a notification board, things like new additions to say what's newly been published to the environment that you can actually deploy. And finally, if I have specific systems that I'm managing, I allow the management of those systems quite simply from the perspective of my systems of promoting how many have I got, are they active, are they in a wait state, etc., from a simple UI. And again, you can customize this UI. There is an admin UI as well, obviously related to this, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of the new look and feel of the new portal. This is if you like, the first stages to us of changing the portal configuration of server automation. Moving on from there, a couple of other things on the usability, and these are one of a couple of many, but these are really productivity improvements. We've created what we call a first pattern dashboard, and what that does is it basically guides you through as a new user onto server automation the things you're most likely to do. And it's like a setup screen, if you like, and you can move things around this dashboard so that when you first come into server automation, these are the things I want to do most frequently. You may never be interested in deploying AIX, for example. So let's get that off your plate. You don't want to see all of that. So the idea of it is to configure your environment for your use. And it guides you through the initial configuration for the common tasks that you want to do and the common setup and the dashboards that you want to utilize on a day-by-day basis. And you can come back to it, by the way. It's not a static once and once only. The idea is it's a first step, and then you can modify it over time. The other thing that we put it onto the user improvements on the dashboards, because obviously we have this new business service deployment capability, and we want to surface that up into the dashboards as well. So the ability to give you a quick look and feel about what you're doing within the perspective of business services without using the reservation manager, and allow you to do things like deploy service and templates and capture services and bring them into the system. And add software to existing service definitions. For example, you may have a test service which doesn't include some of the monitoring environment. When you go to production, you might want to add some monitoring tools onto that. You can bring up the template, recreate the template, add those monitoring tools, and then move it into a production template. So again, dashboard control over that to allow you to administer the system more effectively. We do have one question, as I noticed as I'm going through. I'm not sure if anybody else is picking on that. And I'll just quickly check that. And the question is, so will Service Reservation Manager replace the system service catalog as the end-user portal to make reservations? It's an alternate. Service Catalog is actually part of the Automation Suite for Clouds product. It can be obviously purchased separately, and that's used to drive in an ASC environment the reservations. Standalone, you can use a Reservation Manager. Over time, the look and feel of the Service Catalog may move towards this new portal technology, but that's out of the remit of this group, unfortunately, to know when that may happen. But it doesn't replace it, it's an alternate.
Just to add real quick, Andy, the Service Catalog also has service accounting, which is quite comprehensive chargeback functionality. In addition to that, in the Service Catalog, besides just having services, you might have other IT services. So it's a greater scope than necessarily just an application and service provisioning capability. Service-wise. Thank you.
And thanks for that question, by the way. It's helpful to have some interaction on here because we can help shape the discussion. So moving on from there, that's the dashboard improvements, the usability improvements. Very quick touch on the roadmap. Unfortunately, this is a little strange. The slide, unfortunately, I didn't put this one together myself. But the important point here is this is where we are. I'm not sure if you can see on my cursor or not, but on the box in the top left is 12.7, the storage improvements, the addition of Zen server support and vCloud Director. Moving forward from there, a little bit historical releases. Moving forward from there, the next release of server automation will be 12.8. It's targeted towards the beginning of 2013. The date is not actually, that's the calendar year 2013. The date isn't fully locked and loaded yet. And the items under consideration include the next steps with storage provisioning, first of all, to extend the EMC storage support for Symmetrics. Just a little data point on that, we actually attempted to put that in this release, and unfortunately didn't quite make it, so we'll pick that up on the next release. That will support VNX and VMAX-based environments, and then also to add HP and IBM SAN storage to that mix as well. So we already have the capability to support NetApp. We introduced the support for EMC Clarion in this release. So we're now going to take the next major step in expanding that to the major vendors in the storage space. We mentioned that for both vCloud Director and for Zen, we introduced a concept of basic support initially. Well, we're going to target Zen as the next target. We're going to target Zen first, if you like, for the next steps in that. We're going to add that to SSRM so you can run Reservation Manager, and also integrate that into Service Catalog as well, by the way, because the way Service Catalog integrates in the main with server automation is through that SSRM API interface. Some of you may be familiar with AppLogic. AppLogic 3.5 has just come out, and back in our previous release in 12.6, we actually added, and you can't see it from this slide, the capability to support the provisioning of resources within AppLogic, and that supports 3.0 and 3.1 currently. 3.5 has literally just come out, so we couldn't quite catch up on this release, so we'll be catching up on that on the next. And then we're going to look at catching up and making sure that we use the latest releases of all the other products on Makeup Automation Suite for data centers, and obviously Automation Suite for clouds inherits that for things like process automation, ITCM, and network automation, all of which have releases that come out in between 12.7 and 12.8. And we will pick those latest releases up. So it gives you a bit of a flavor of where we're going to with the next upcoming release of server automation. So I'll pause for a little moment, ask if there's any questions. We only have another half an hour, unfortunately. So I'm going to jump into the next section in a moment. I'll run through it fairly quickly, but before we move on, have you any other questions?
And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to ask a question, please do so by pressing star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. And there are no questions at this time.
Thank you very much. I will move straight on then. And the next topic on the agenda is to talk about network automation. Unfortunately, you'll get my croaky voice for the next couple of minutes as well. The reason we added this in this discussion today, a lot of people aren't familiar with this technology, so we wanted to just introduce it to you and just tell you where the current state of the product is. Network automation is network change and configuration management. For those that are familiar with the old Cohesion product, now CCA that Taylor's going to talk about in a few moments, it does pretty much the same thing for network devices as CCA, as it's called now, configuration automation does for servers and applications. So just a little bit of background about how we went about this. This is not a CA product per se. This is a reseller product. The product is a product from a company called Infoblox, a market leader in this space. And back end of August last year, we actually signed a reseller agreement with them, and we've been selling it over that period of time, nearly sort of a year now, under the banner name of CA Network Automation. It's been rebadged, but it's simply a skin over the product, but it's essentially the same product as Infoblox's NetMRI product. Provides this network change and configuration management capability. I'll touch upon what that means in the next couple of slides. And we have provided some integration, firstly with server automation in the November 2011 release in 12.6, and I can touch upon that towards the end of the cycle. We've enhanced that with 12.7 as well. We've had some requests in for other integrations, and they're being discussed at the moment, to be clear. So let's move on from there. I'm just going to take you through a very high-level overview, and I'll probably skip the next 2 slides that delve into a little bit deeper. But what it is, as I mentioned, it allows you to collect configuration information, deep configuration information from network devices. When I say network device, I mean any layer 2 or layer 3 device, a router, a switch, a firewall, even down to items such as Cisco IP phones, wireless access points, if you choose to do so. What it does is it does it dynamically. It doesn't reach out to it on a periodic basis and scan the configuration on these devices. It uses a technology, a patented technology, that actually provides what we call proactive scanning. And what that does is it actually watches syslog and collects the information based upon a change in it detects in syslog. So it triggers a detection, detects a change, then triggers a collection dynamically. So you're always up to date, and that's why we call it real-time analysis. It also obviously has historic information about what a configuration was yesterday, the day before, ... You can store things like snapshots of the information, etc. Now, it collects it via a number of techniques. SNMP, CLI configuration depending on the device, syslogs, fingerprinting, and you can also do things like TFTP to the device and HTTP protocols as well. So there's a dot under that list. Initial discovery is through SNMP, and then from there on inwards it will connect with the authenticated credentials onto the device. It provides discovery, analytics based upon best practices and security policies, including regulatory compliance, for example. It detects any issues associated, including resource issues, performance issues on the device, and it monitors and manages those change over time. Now, should it find an issue, it can remediate the issue. So the idea being, rather like CCA, if you find a problem, whether it be out of compliance or you detect something which is not a good idea, you have a network outage, for example, and you discover that somebody's fat-fingered a router, you can go and fix that. You can either roll it back to a previous configuration, or you can actually make the dynamic changes appropriate. It supports a very, very wide range of vendors, all the mainstream vendors, and adding a new platform is not a trivial thing, but it's usually in a few weeks, and what the Infoblocks do is they have a monthly update of their device driver support, and there's something like 4,000 devices it supports today, and we've had some requests of some very unusual devices, and certainly there's something that can be done either through services or through the regular update protocols that they have. So covering the 3 topics, and I did it extremely quickly to give Taylor his time, basically the idea is to automate routine network automations. Look for change and make change across one or multiple devices. And the good thing is it's rather like server auto, it's device agnostic. So if you want to change the password on a device, you don't have to log into Blockade this way and F5 this way, Cisco this way, and run this script or that script. It doesn't work like that. It allows you to get to a level above that and change the password, and it will figure out how it needs to communicate to the device. The idea being it gives you that one look and feel to multiple vendors' devices. And so the first thing is routine network operation. Example of this is Cisco, for example, will recommend that you rotate your admin password on all the devices every between 60 and 90 days. You log into the device, have to change password, log into the next device, etc. You can do that through one click. Change password. What's a new password? What's the old password and the new password? Bam, done. And it will deploy across not just Cisco devices, for example. So the idea being you minimize the impact of the network operations team. The other area is problem identification. One of the most common issues with application outages is a network problem. And that could be anything, as I said, from somebody going in, making a change, accidentally fat-fingering a route, for example, a route, and you can no longer get your application from the front end. It's a very simple thing. A very, very simple cause of the problem, but fixing is difficult. Finding and fixing is difficult. So the first thing is it'll find that problem. It'll see something that's been changed, so a change is detected. It may be a policy change, or in this instance, it's a change that just was different from yesterday. It'll flag that up to you very, very quickly. There's various parameters it uses to do that, but there's various ways to do it, both from a visual perspective, such as on the bottom screenshot here, where you see the network focus, where it goes a different color, it goes red, where there's a problem, something's changed, it's out of policy, or it's causing an outage. You can drill into it and drill down and find the exact problem. And then, of course, the idea being with this proactive discovery of that change and proactive remediation, it can actually prevent the issue from causing a problem very, very quickly, because you're notified very, very quickly of a change that could be detrimental to the environment, and based on policy or your rules, will flag that up, send an alert out, for example, and you can send a SNMP or email alerts out from the product as well, so your administrators know immediately that there is a problem. The third area is really all about compliance. Rather like CCA, it has a capability of checking against some standards. Those standards could be your policies, or in this instance, regulatory, such as PCI, DISA, SOX, etc. And it has a rule builder, like most of the technologies do, and they allow you to create customized rules and policies that meet your needs and drill down into those and apply those policies dynamically. The interesting thing, if I go back a slide, one of the uniques, this number, if you can see it at the top of the screen here, is 9.2, is an overall like performance score. And what you're looking for there is an up and down in that number. Where you go out of policy a lot, that number's going to go down. When it goes down, it's a flag to the administrators, say start looking at things. Something's getting out of policy somewhere. Then you can drill down and find out exactly where, and again, remediate that. So 3 basic uses: network change configuration detection, remediation, and compliance, and remediation on the compliance side. So that is the product. Now, that was introduced, as I said, about a year ago. We have a number of customers that are using it, and I can touch quickly about some of the configuration integration that we've done with server automation very, very quickly for you. What we allow you to do is build VLANs on physical devices as part of the provisioning exercise. Most of the configuration that's done in prior releases of server automation, when you build a VLAN, it's unique to, let's say, a vSphere. So you can, that's all very well and good, but if you have things outside, they have to talk to the actual VM to get the end-to-end application and business service configuration working correctly. You have to build and propagate those VLANs across the network. So that's what we built in 12.6. It allows you to build and configure those particular device configurations for those VLANs across physical devices, as well as virtual devices, of course. The other thing that's been built, and this is a field integration work, and it often comes up in questions and answers when we look at this product, is what about Spectrum? Spectrum is a monitoring solution, obviously, and if it sees a problem on the network, it's going to see SNMP traps, flag it up to the administrators. They can go and see what the problems actually are. What has been built is a field integration to this, so that an alert that's coming out of the NCCM technology from Infoblox is actually placed into Spectrum, and you can visualize it inside Spectrum, drill down into Spectrum, and then launch back into network automation Infoblox product to see what the problem actually was. So it's things like network alarms, etc., and they sync between the two environments. The devices are also synced, because obviously if the device is discovered in Spectrum or the device is discovered in network automation, it's good to share that information. So we actually have that as well. It's not an out-of-the-box product per se, but we have it available through a services engagement. So that's some of the integration work that's been done since we've been working with the folks at Infoblox. Finally, very quickly, to allow Taylor sufficient time, we just released 6.4, very minor release in terms of the normalities of these things. So the most important things are the most up-to-date Cisco devices. There's some enhanced support for IPv6 audits. I didn't talk to that, but there's some very specific analyses and reports and dashboards related to if you're going through an IPv6 migration to help you with that migration. What this has done is actually wired up to the Cisco Discovery Service a little bit more depth to provide audit reports for IPv6, particularly for IPv6 migrations, some security improvements. And the other thing that's come up as well, if anybody wants to evaluate this product, we have a downloadable version which has an auto-generatable key to allow you to support an evaluation of the product. That's new in this release as well. So I don't see any questions on the Q&A, and for time we can ask a very quick question, please, to see if there are any questions, and then I'll hand it over.
Thank you, Boo-Boo. You gave it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to ask a question, you may do so by pressing star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to ask a question, you may do so by pressing star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. And there are no questions at this time, sir.
Thank you very much. With that, I would like to hand it over to Taylor. Taylor's going to cover configuration automation in the limited time he has left.
Thanks, Andy. So, yeah, I'm Taylor Howe. I'm the product manager for configuration automation. Depending on how long you've been using CA products and if you've been using any of our service management tools such as Service Desk Manager or CMDB, you may be familiar with an earlier product that this was derived from, which is Cohesion. And essentially, what configuration automation is the next generation from CA of Cohesion and its ability to do server and application discovery, dependency mapping, and relationship identification, as well as from an application configuration standpoint, change detection, remediation, and compliance. So different from the network automation product and server automation, we're more focused on how things are configured from a server and OS standpoint, as well as the applications that you're concerned about that are running on those servers. Not particularly anything along the lines of like IT Client Manager, where they're desktop oriented and cover a much broader number of devices. We're very much focused on what's running on the servers and the platforms that they're running on. And this has been something that has always been, in addition to, as Andy mentioned, network devices causing outages, probably one of the other areas that causes the most pain points and problems and is the source of many issues and outages and performance problems is that configuration settings on the applications on the servers are either incorrectly set or get changed either through accidentally or through changes that maybe you're not aware of when a new application or version rolls out. So having the insight into how the servers and applications are configured is a very important aspect of managing the life cycle of your applications and workflow, and also solving problems. So some of the background. So once we came out with the originally called Application Configuration Manager from Cohesion, and now called Configuration Automation as it joined the automation suite of tools, we have gone through a number of releases, and our current release is 12.6, and we just recently came out in May with a service pack with some additional fixes and a few feature adds, but mostly some localization around Japanese. But in most cases, if you've worked with this product or are familiar with this product, in 12.6 we introduced some major functionality around multi-tenancy capabilities, particularly for MSPs or large organizations that want to manage different aspects or different areas within their organization and keep that data separate and manage it from a separate standpoint, but be able to access it through a single UI. We also started adding some capabilities around clustering, discovery, and management. We added our own visualizer, the ability to view the topology of an application or a service within Config Auto itself without necessarily requiring you to federate it to either the CMDB or some other tool that has the visualizer. So it now has a self-contained visualizer that can help you analyze what you have. We've also continued to improve our capability of identifying relationships and mapping those relationships through both agent-based discoveries and application discoveries, as well as agentless discoveries and netstat-based and network-based traffic. And with every release, we try to do something along the lines of improving scalability and performance. And with any tool that deals with servers and apps and configuration settings, there's a lot of data that you're having to scan through, manage, and collect. And therefore, you can really bog things down if you're trying to manage too many servers or go after too much data at any one time. So being able to architect the application so that you can distribute that and expand it based on your environment, we've been making a number of improvements there. And 12.6 introduced a number of capabilities there. So in general, the way configuration automation works is it has a standard workflow of first doing discovery of the environment and looking for the servers and the applications that you want to be able to manage, or just going out and finding out what you have so that you can then determine what you want to manage. And we start with a capability around doing scans for both servers, physical servers, and hypervisors and virtual hosting machines and virtual environments, and being able to determine the difference between those or identify the devices in your environment as being either physical or being a hosting server or being a virtual host on one of those hosted environments. And also being able to discover specific certain software components. Many of these are based on the blueprints that we provide, which are a way to identify certain applications that are most common in a business service or an application environment in companies today. And those are, your large database applications, your web-based application environments, WebLogic, BEA, WebSphere, SAP, and so on, and many Java-based applications. So being able to identify those types of applications and understand how they're configured is a good part of what we provide out of the box. Now, once you've discovered those components, Config Auto is really designed to allow you to then manage those from a configuration change and compliance standpoint. So there's many ways that you can look at, discover and manage your applications and servers, but the most common way is to group those into a defined service, so very much like a business service where you say, this is my SAP CRM application, or this is my online web service, sales web service, or online store. And you define the server, you manage the servers and the applications that are part of that service as an entire defined service. And then what you do is you basically check to see if the configurations on there are, one, meeting your standards and requirements as far as configuration settings, two, if anything is changing in those environments, and then three, from a compliance standpoint, you may, depending on the industry that you're in, you may need to be able to prove that you're monitoring those for certain configuration settings around security and who has access to it and how many servers are talking to that server and where they're located. And so you can automate that process through configuration automation by defining the services, defining the management profile around that service, and then scheduling that for regular checks and reports. And then you can modify those as you go, but essentially you set up the cycle of being able to manage it, snapshot it, check for changes, check for config settings, And then if you do find things that are out of compliance or things that have changed, having the ability to quickly identify that and remediate that back to the proper setting or to a new setting that may be required. So first, the biggest capability around Config Auto is actually going out there and discovering what you have as far as servers and hardware details. And with Config Auto, different from Cohesion, that you now have both an agent-based or an agentless-based way of doing that or capability around that. So everything that we could do originally with Cohesion around blueprints and everything, we can now do with agentless technologies, or you can continue to use the installed agents that could be deployed to your servers. And depending on your environment and your policies, you may need to be able to do things without agents because you don't want to be able to you don't want additional burden on your servers with additional agents, or you just want to not worry about having to manage and deal with those. So we've upgraded the capability around both accessing through CMI, through SSH, through Telnet, and a number of other agentless type technologies. The one thing that we provide through this tool is a very detailed and deep level of discovery and collection of those configuration settings. So part of that is being able to access things through a credentialed access. So we've also provided the mechanism for being able to provide credentials, store them securely, and be able to use those so that things can be automated without having to change or put in passwords every time you want to run a scan or a refresh. Things that we look at now, in addition to the applications, but we also collect specific information about the hardware configuration settings, things around what services are running, what applications are installed from the view of either the Windows installed applications or the package adds and package installs on Unix and Linux systems. And also now we have open port mapping. So in addition to what applications are running, we can tell you a lot about what's running on that server in addition to your applications or what services are actually active and which ones are turned off. And again, we have over 350 predefined application mapping blueprints which specifically identify certain applications and identify what configuration files should be parsed and managed and what other aspects and configuration settings about that application would be important to understand and then to manage from a config change and compliance standpoint. So as I mentioned, we also now cluster aware right now for Microsoft and IBM, and in the next release we'll be adding additional clustering capabilities around Linux clusters and Oracle environments as well, Solaris and Oracle database. This just gives the added ability to understand where applications are installed in clustered or high availability environments and being able to define those relationships and map those and understand where you may have dependencies on servers that are the primary servers that are the failover servers, and how those things are configured. Primary capability of Config Auto is around managing configuration drifts. So this is where the change comparison capabilities comes in. So you've got applications out there. They may have been configured properly in the first place, but over time, as things are updated or people are in there making changes or tweaking the application, either known changes or unknown changes, you need to be aware of who's making those changes when they're being made. And so the ability to be able to monitor those specific servers and applications and identify those very detailed and minute changes that may be occurring in configuration files port settings, Windows registry settings, things like that. Anything that might change the functionality of that application or the performance of the application, it's something that you should know about and be able to track those and remediate those if they do occur. Compliance, similar to as Andy described with Network Auto, we have the capability of being able to check how a particular application or server OS is configured with regards to regulatory compliance standards. So in the 12.6 release and in later releases, we've been adding compliance-specific blueprints. And what these blueprints are designed to do is to add a set of rules taken from a regulatory governance source, and in this case we use the Center for Internet Security, and define rules that actually check against the configuration settings you have on your applications to see if they are in compliance with those standards. And so there's a number of things that we can do to help ease that burden of being able to, of having to check to make sure that your servers and your OS settings and your application settings are in compliance with these different regulatory standards. So as we are adding more and more compliance capabilities, we're adding more applications to our list of compliance-ready blueprints and adding those and predefining those rules for you so that out of the box you can check for the standard compliance. And then if you need to modify those to your own set of standards or adjust those to your own requirements, you can go in and manage those rules or add new rules or modify the existing rules as you need. So it's highly customizable, but it gives you that out-of-the-box capability to start checking for compliance on the standards platforms. So the platforms that we support for compliance are Windows OS, the latest versions of that, Linux OS, Solaris, AIX, HPUX, and some of the large applications, database, IIS server, and some of the other VMware ESX and other larger applications. So we'll continue to improve the capability there. One of the other areas is being able to visualize those dependencies. So we have on our dashboard 2 different areas now. In the past, we merely had the kind of an inventory charts capability where you could look at what you have as far as your servers and your applications and be able to understand where things are heavy on, whether you're heavy on Windows or Solaris or Unix, and what you have in your environment and how they're mapped out. And now we have the capability now to actually visualize that in a topology view as well. And so the visualizer gives you that capability. And so it not only allows you to see what you have from a server aspect, but you can select from a number of different views to look at a cluster view, a service view, what are the servers that had changes, or what are the servers that have been out of compliance, or the applications. You can, I mean, there's literally thousands of different views that you can choose from and or define yourself to understand how your environments and your applications are interdependent. One of the things that we do is to give you the ability to, one, see how what are the dependencies between the servers, whether it be from a network NetStat standpoint or from applications that are installed on those servers and may have dependencies on other servers, like an application that has a JDBC URL database configuration link. And the server that it's pointing to in that config file can quickly be identified through this topology view because we'll map that and tie that relationship from one server to the other based on the fact that it's connecting to a database on another server. And not only that, but we can also tell you what's the database that it's actually talking to on that database server. So you can be very high level and look at the entire view, or you can be very granular and go down into the specific detail. The other thing you can do is you can work from within the visualizer to actually manage your services, manage your profile, your management jobs, invoke jobs, and enact or refresh data or enact jobs from that visualizing tool. So I thought I had a slide here on what's coming up, but so in our next release, 12.7, which is going to be coming out towards the end of this year, some of the things that we're doing is enhancing this visualizing capability to actually being able to define your services by viewing it through the visualizer and searching on or defining profiles based on, what ports you may want to include, what applications you may want to include, what types of OS, and be able to go out and capture all that and build that into a service. So rather than having to just pick the servers and put them in a service, you can actually identify what servers are actually running that application and be able to eliminate the unwanted parts and include the parts that you need, and then build that service from that profile. We're also expanding the capability of identifying SAN storage. So in 12.7, we'll have some capabilities around NetApp and EMC in identifying SAN storage relationships. So what servers are talking to what storage devices, and what servers are talking or are tied to specific LUNs on those storage devices. So in bringing in that storage view into the overall visualization and dependencies capabilities, as well as enhancing the platforms that we support for clustering and virtualization as well. So we're at the end of our time here. I think we'll keep it open just if there's any other questions, and we'll take those questions now.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to ask a question, you may do so by pressing star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to ask a question, you may do so by pressing star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. And there are no audio questions at this time, sir.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to hear what we're doing with the automation suite, and